Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth Yang and I will be choosing to do my research project on morbid obesity. Throughout this presentation, my objective is to go over in depth on why morbid obesity exists. I will be going over on how morbid obesity is defined, the stigmas behind morbid obesity, different ways to overcome obesity, and my own personal influences and experience. Obesity is when a person has excessive body fat. This impacts their health and their well-being. Clinically severe obesity or morbidly obese is when someone is 80 pounds heavier than their ideal healthy weight. This leads to a lot of physical illnesses such as diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and joint pain. This also leads to an emotional and mental effect of a person's well-being, so it lowers your self-esteem, increases anxiety, and depression. I will be going over on how obesity is diagnosed. Oftentimes when we go to the clinics or the hospitals, they would take our BMI. This is our body mass index. So this is dividing your weight by your height. If we take a look at this chart, the most ideal weight that we would want people to have is stated in the yellow. Sometimes our BMI is not accurate, as a lot of us have buildup of muscles as well, and that counts as our weight. Another method often used to diagnose if we are obese is through measuring our waist circumference. So for example, women who are greater than or less than 35 inches, or for men, if they are greater than or equal to 40 inches around their waist circumference, they would be considered obese. Scientists have linked this method as a more accurate measurement because it also depends on where your body fat is proportionated. And oftentimes, depending on where it is proportionated, it leads to other illnesses, for example, cardiovascular diseases. Another method that I found to diagnose obesity is through calculating your body fat percentage. So for example, men that are measuring greater than or equal to 30% of body fat are considered obese. And then for women, if they are measuring greater than or equal to 35% of body fat, then they are also considered obese. This helps you determine a muscle to fat ratio, which therefore is a rough estimate due to the lack of variables, so such as where the body fat is located. Like for example, if it is near the heart, if it's near the stomach, or if it's in the lower body. There are multiple stereotypes when it comes to someone being obese or morbidly obese. Oftentimes, most people assume that the person is lazy, irresponsible, clumsy, and weak. This often leads to devaluing a person, discrimination, and a lot of negative media portrayal of morbidly obese people. Society assumes that labeling people who are obese will motivate them for weight loss, but oftentimes they forget that it causes severe physical and psychological torment to these individuals who internalizes these stigmas. What most people forget to do is be aware of these biases and notice that their judgments are not always true. There are a lot of different influences. So this includes someone's family genetics that is more prone and sensitive to food and body fat distribution. And not only that, but according to a study by Harvard, the appetite that you are feeling, if you're feeling really, really full or you're constantly craving, it is often passed down by family members. Your socioeconomic is also affected because the food that is available to you is not always as healthy. This is the same for people and their environment, as most cities with higher crime rates, that would actually cause them to be more obese because they won't go out as much. And lastly, another influence is a person's mental health and their well-being, which ties to family and their genetics as well. Now, we know what obesity is and why it is important, but why is this really important beyond ourselves? People do not just one day wake up and say that they want to be morbidly obese. Based on of what I have stated before, obesity is often the effects of other medical, mental, environmental factors, and genetic conditions. Our 21st century lifestyles has changed over time. We no longer are as active, so we don't really need to consistently hunt, we don't really need to walk for miles to go to work, and we don't really need to go to the farm when, our industrial growth in the cities and fast food presence is all here. It's more accessible, it's more time sufficient, and honestly, it's more processed. There are also more entertainment that causes psychological and behavioral effects, such as isolation, social media binging, food binging, sugar addiction, and this often also leads to increasing low self-esteem. Everyone knows someone who is obese or morbidly obese. It is good to know about the lifestyles that people have and be more inclusive. Most people don't go this extra step except to educate themselves about obesity, right? In order to create change in yourself and others, it is best to not shame ourselves and others. We need to know our family history, and we need to also give grace to our mental health. We also need to encourage healthier habits, such as food substitution, and start small. For example, better sleep or more water intake, right? Change starts with those mini steps. We also need to modify the activities that we do, cut them into smaller increments or in like a safer environment, honestly. We need to acknowledge that these factors can help prevent and address obesity in ourselves and others when we create a more inclusive and safe environment. The influence of my culture and background on obesity is through dieting. For example, Asians love rice. Rice is served along with any other dish. Rice is also a filling carbohydrate that helps many Hmong people who are starving during the wars. So for example, when they were being forced out of China and needed the extra boost for energy, there was rice. Rice was easily accessible, it was there, it was filling. In my culture, we value eating together as a family at a big table, otherwise known as buffet style. It is actually really disrespectful if we do not eat at the table with the rest of the family. Often, this means that we ate what we were served. When COVID-19 hit, our Hmong community survival instinct kicked in. You would not be able to find rice within 25 miles of the cities. Rice and pork was honestly our savior. And as for pork was actually our number one sacrificial animal to our ancestors to help us guide our spirits to and from the human realm. So we honestly ate what was available. Morbid obesity and the impact on my life. I chose my topic because of my own personal experiences. The first experience that I had with obesity was during childhood. I was in the 4th grade. My elementary school had recommended to my parents to put me in a program for the summer where a health professional would visit me at home weekly and weigh me. I was 104 pounds, I believe. The flaw with this was that the neighborhood that I lived in had a lot of crime rates, so I honestly didn't go out much. I had no idea how to lose weight, and I was constantly shamed for being a chubby child. On the last week of my summer program, I found out I was 114 pounds at 10 years old. I never really took my physical wellness journey seriously, as my family of 7 was surviving on my father's income. Bullying was continuous at school and children were uneducated. So then I started starving myself. As I reflect on my life, my morbid obesity was a result of multiple factors. My mother was considered obese, and that was part where I got my genetics. My culture incorporated a lot of pork and rice. I had a habit of food binging and going for my comfort food. I later found out I had PTSD and other mental health issues. And focusing on my physical wellness was not really possible until I faced every other aspect of my life, which then relates back to our 9 dimensions of well-being. Did I get to where I am today on my own? No, I had an incredible support system. I chose to introduce this topic because I wanted to touch base on the importance of your well-being as someone who was diagnosed with morbid obesity. Everyone just needs a little support sometimes, and self-discipline, and with building a healthy habit. Be kind and be encouraging, as you don't know what's going on in someone else's life. You don't know their constant battles, right? Remember, your journey is a road full of vines, bridges, and quakes. It only ends when you stop trying.